As you know, my name is James Phifer, and I'm with ACCU. I had an opportunity to give an interview with a wonderful person by the name of Pat Crosscombe. Pat has an extensive history. She's lived in Canada. She's also lived in the United States. She spent a lot of time studying at Cornell, really cool, and she's very proud of that, as well as spending a considerable amount of time, I believe it was 5 years, in Thailand. I had an opportunity to interview her, and she has quite the war stories, and I'm really excited to present them to you here. Lastly, the intention of this platform is really a place to go where people get to give their perspective. A board member's perspective is going to be different than a manager's, different than a vendor's, and there really needs to be some type of content format that gives people the opportunity to speak their mind and tell us where they come from their perspective. Just understand that I don't endorse anything that is being said. I am here to listen and to try and educate the community. Also, I've got a secret. I'm not an attorney. Anything as it relates to possible legal advice is only my opinion. Make sure that you consult your HOA attorney if you have any questions. With that, I'm really excited to present the interview with Pat Crosscombe.
Within about 2 weeks of moving in, I realized that there was definitely lots of stuff going on.
So that's really interesting. So you were buying your first home. It was a condo. You went through your due diligence process, and it was after purchasing that you found out that there was more underneath the covers, right? So you kind of peeled back the sheets a little bit and started to find out that there was, what was it? Was it deferred maintenance? Was it the culture within the community? Tell me a little bit more about what was going on in that community.
Well, this was an 87-unit townhouse condo that had been converted from rental property by somebody who bought the property, converted it to condominium. Okay. So old property, but brand new condo. So I'm sure that immediately the first thing comes to your mind is old building maintenance and money in reserve fund to pay for this.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly where my head went.
Because that's exactly what I would think today. But I didn't know anything about condos. And I had a lawyer do all due diligence as is required. We have a thing in Canada called a status certificate. And so the status certificate is basically a declaration that things are what they say they are. They talk about expected, any planned special assessments, is the budget adequate, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Right.
I don't know what that process is called in the States or by each state, but it's a little different, I think.
It is a little different here, correct.
But this is a good document. At least it should be a good document if it's accurate. The problem was that this set of documents was not accurate. It did not present a accurate financial picture of our property. Now, I didn't even know that at the time. Like the first couple of weeks, first couple of months, I didn't know that much. But the main issue then was that the units had been renovated, significantly renovated. And when we moved in, there were always there's always little problems when you buy a new house or a renovated house. So that wasn't the surprise, but the surprise was that the work wasn't really being done, and no one was getting the work done, and other aspects were not done. The snow contractor was subpar, and you guys know what snow is, and we had lots and lots of snow, and so there's a whole bunch of little things. And as the board, at that time there was no board of directors, it was the developer and his wife.
Okay, so this is still under development control at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
It was supposed to turn over the first board member when the certain number of percentage was sold, but that didn't happen. And we found that we knew about that. We learned about that, and we organized and thought we should have a new owner on the board. And time went on, and he refused to provide us with documents. And then eventually there came the turnover meeting, and I decided to run for the board. I didn't get on the board.
Is this your first time getting on a board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it was developer controlled. You understood a little bit more about what was going on, and so you took it upon yourself. Were there other people that were involved in this at this time, or were you kind of the single crusader?
I wouldn't say I was a single crusader. The owners were, you know how it works. They sort of start talking.
Right.
And they talk to each other, and then enough people took the leadership position that yes, we need to get together. And so meetings took place in living rooms and basements, and we talked, what should we do? Nobody knew anything, of course, like nothing about condos, but we just kept talking, and it was obvious that certain people were more willing to act as a leader, myself being one of them. I was happy to jump in and help, except I didn't know what that help would mean. That AGM, a board was elected. I sort of got finagled out of getting on the board through a bit of a sleight of hand by the developer. Anyway, the board fell apart about 8 months later, had a special meeting, had to elect more directors, and I finally got on the board.
Okay.
That was all within about the first 2 years of buying. And then, well, that was when we really started to find out what was going on. The other issue that was happening is people were then soon having roofs leaking. But the roofs were all supposed to be in okay condition, fine condition. For example, a neighbor on Christmas Eve had water pour in around the chimney, the vent chimney on the roof, and the water ran down the sort of the edge of the chimney, came right into her kitchen, and the water just poured out all over the kitchen, the walls and whatnot. Like, what a disaster.
Wow.
Christmas Eve with a turkey that had just been cooked.
How many other homeowners were experiencing the same type of issues with the roofs? Was it many, or were they kind of isolated incidents?
Well, they were one-off incidents, but they were becoming lots of one-offs. Like, they would happen over and over again, and all sorts of different things. And he did not respond. He did not do anything.
He being the developer.
He being the developer and the property manager and the everything. And yeah, just, but nightmares being what they are, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
And once we got control of the board, three directors, 3 owners on the board, we got control of our our bank accounts. And then we realized we just started to learn more and more and more what had gone wrong. One example that will make your eyes roll is he had a line of credit on the bank account that he used. The interest charges for the line of credit on the bank account, the condo paid for.
That was going to be my next question. So when this line of credit was taken out, was it taken out under the association's name, or was it taken out under his name and he was using the funds of the association to pay that debt, or how did that work?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but he even had a debit card on the bank account. He was the sole signing authority.
Right.
Boards don't have debit cards on their bank accounts, because there's no multiple authorizations. So lots and lots of crazy little things. The line of credit was, he paid the line of credits back, but
okay, good. That's great. Good to hear.
Condo paid the interest. He took out the wrong insurance. He took insurance out on his original purchase, which was a commercial rental property. But as it was converted to condo, which it was, there was no change in the type of insurance, which we finally were able to do, different cost and so on, for example, but we never got the money that the association paid for, because the plan was in his name, and we never got that money back. So we double paid on the insurance. Like, I mean, it's just on and on and on and on and on. It was a total nightmare, a complete and utter nightmare that we spent 5 years, you know, sorting through. Lots of, we launched a very big, multiple lawsuits, $5 million civil suit. Along the way, we got countersued by various other people. It was a very, very, very busy 5 years.
It sounds like it. What a massive undertaking by the board to all of a sudden be launched into almost having to be experts to a certain extent, and to issues with the roof, and juggling legal issues and homeowner values. And I'm sure that there was probably some contractors that came into play at a certain point. And I'm sure the learning curve was probably straight up for a considerable amount of time.
And special assessments, of course, because we had to make significant repairs and there was no money to do that.
So did you have to special assess to get those repairs done? You did. So you went through a special assessment. How'd the owners take that?
Well, there's nothing like disaster to get owners on board with you and to pay attention when they normally are pretty complacent. So right. The owners knew what was going on. Like, they were well aware that they were experiencing lots of problems. We had a lot of meetings. We had our lawyers there. People pretty much knew, and they all realized there was no money. So yes, the special assessment, and the first one was $15K.
Okay.
About 15, 13, and 10, you know, depending on the size.
And how many units did you say at the beginning? Did I hear 90 something?
87.
87. Okay, 87 units and 15,000. And are you an association that charges based on allocated interest or square footage, or does everyone pay an equal amount in your community?
No, it's based on an assessment by square footage, and we have 3 different sizes.
Gotcha.
So 3 different levels.
Right.
So sort of your 1, 2, and 3, and then if they have multiple parking spaces, they pay a bit more.
Okay.
So 15,000. So roughly say 10 times 87. So that was a $870,000 special assessment to start, and that wasn't the only one.
Okay.
We've had many. I think we've had 3 or 4. None of them were as big again. A second one was about $6,000. So like, that's over $25,000 in special assessments. Anyway, huge learning curve, massive learning curve. And it was a great board. The 3 of us were all bright, smart people who wanted to get the job done.
Sure.
Could not have asked for a better one. And we worked together. We worked together, we fought together, and we ended as friends, and we got the job done. We made mistakes along the way, but I think we did pretty much everything anyone could ever do from a management, being on a board. It was great fun too, because we were actually making things better.
So it sounds like there was a happy ending to this story. At the end of it, did things work for the association, or how'd that work out?
I have to say that there was really no happy ending. So this has now been 12 years since I bought, and I got on the board. I stepped off the board after 5 years to then work on my business. I was off the board for a couple of years. I got on the board, and now I'm off the board again. But at the end of 12 years, many things happened. So we eventually had to drop our lawsuit. We were not successful. The evil guy, as I call him, went bankrupt many times over because we were not his only victims. He had played numerous games of fraud with other properties. They were all rental properties. So there was no money left. We eventually gave up, and this was about 7 or 8 years into a civil suit. So we had spent a lot of money on legal fees, engineering reports to prove damage,
yep,
lots of repairs, like you name it, agonizing, but we finally dropped it. There was never going to be an upside. The other downside was because we had so many issues going on, legal stuff, all of which have to be reported on the status certificate declared, we have this lawsuit and this lawsuit and so on. You must declare those. Property value.
Right. And so that hurts resale value during the time that you're going through it, because you have to put that on the status letter when there's a potential buyer. So really affecting property value during that time, right?
And even, early on when we were sorting things out, before we knew what we were going to do, we started to create an accurate status certificate. And so it was so bad you can't even imagine. So nobody would buy then. Property values plummeted. And I could not sell. I eventually moved out, but I could not sell. So I started renting. Yeah, very, very,
So if you were to go back and give yourself some advice when you first started getting into this and filing the lawsuit, tell us what that would look like. Would you do the same thing over again the same way, or what would you change?
Lawsuits are highly problematic from the get-go. And the biggest challenge with lawsuits is to know that the system does not work for you. It works for your lawyers. Our courts are jammed. Civil cases take years to get to trial, even if you are ultimately successful. And would we have still launched the lawsuit in the beginning? Yes, I'm certain that we would have. That would have been the right decision. But where we erred was we went to mediation. We sat down with the parties, and it's a rather long story. We did not get a settlement. We should have ended our lawsuit then. But we went
at mediation. So in Canada, is it also a requirement, because here in the States, or at least in Denver, Colorado, there's a requirement to mediate before you arbitrate or litigate. Is it the same there?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And so that's why we did it. But it's a very long story, some of which I'm not able to explain.
Divulge. Sure.
To divulge, yes. But we should have ended it then, and we didn't. And I left the board. Comes back to another point that I'll get to that's so important is to, So we continued on, so examination for discovery and so on and so on. Then you come to this pre-trial conference. I was back on the board at that point, but 3 or 4 years had passed, and he was bankrupt.
And so through the discovery process, because every time I go through a discovery process for an association, the things that you find, it's just, sometimes you're just floored. Did you come across any of those aha moments, or, wow, I can't believe they did that?
So I was no longer on the board at that time. So I didn't actually go through it, but I did read the documentation afterwards. No, I think we had pretty much discovered everything there was to discover, because we had exchanged documents prior to mediation. And we knew most of the core issues, which were pretty dramatic when we found them at the time. We certainly learned more information as time went on, but I don't think we learned anything that was truly earth-shattering. Okay. More stuff was like, how could anybody do this, and so on and so forth. So, but that's 4 years in that process. And add that time to 3 or 4 years, we were 8 years into a civil lawsuit. There was no money. There was no hope of any money.
How'd that work with insurance? Did they have any insurance that was being called into question? Did they bring that in during a mediation, a litigation, or what was going on there?
So do you have a system of title insurance when you buy a property?
We do have title insurance here, correct.
So it's common practice that everyone buys title insurance when they buy any property. And so we all had it. And we were able to get payments through our personal individual title insurers. Okay. So I got my initial $15,000 paid back to me.
For the special assessment that,
yes, correct.
That applied. So title insurance paid you back for that special assessment.
So we are probably special in Canada, if not Canada in the US. We were the largest number of title insurance claims paid out for new buyers of this condo, because something like 35 or 38 unit owners received these payments.
Okay.
So pretty unique in that regards.
Yeah, that is unique. I can't say that I've heard title insurance paying on any type of situation like this. So one other question, was this an apartment to condo conversion? Did I hear that correctly? There was a rental, yes. And the developer turned it into condo. So it wasn't a new build. Okay, I understand. Okay, well, good. Interesting.
But the insurance companies are not going to pay out an amount of money that large without a large fight. And so when I was on the board, we learned all about this stuff, and a group of us made a concerted effort to fight for our insurance payments. It only took us, I think, about 1.5 years before they agreed to pay, because they kept saying no, 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 no. But being on the board with another equally skilled board member, we had all the ammunition we needed, and we sent them like literally a pile of documents this thick that we had access to that owners would not necessarily have had access to. So then we got our title insurance payments. There was only 6 with the one company, but then we helped all the other owners prepare their documents for the other title insurance companies. So they got paid as well, but for the one company, it took a lawyer to threaten a lawsuit to get those payments back. So it was definitely a massive fight to get the money back.
Sounds pretty complicated. One of the reasons I started this YouTube channel was I was sitting around doing some research, and I was looking online, and I YouTubed HOA, and the amount of negativity that was on there concerned me, because if you're a board member or maybe somebody who's interested in being a community association manager, and you go online to YouTube and you look to do some research, I bet everyone says, oh, I am not doing that. And so my campaign here is to try and hear why board members choose to be more board members and perhaps choose to become reelected again. So tell me a little bit about your experience as a board member, because it sounds like you were a board member, and even though things were difficult and you were probably volunteering more time than you had expected getting onto a voluntary position, I would like to hear a little bit about the good side of it, the camaraderie between board members, how you feel about what you're doing for your community, and why you would suggest somebody run for their board.
So I am like you as well, very concerned about the negativity, the horror stories, the disaster stories. And I want to change that message on social media, in the press, and so on, because condos, HOAs are the way of the future. If you don't live in one now, you will at some point.
If you don't live in one now, you will at some point. That's very true.
Well, so if you look at, so particularly Toronto, the price of a single family dwelling is well beyond what the vast majority of Torontonians will ever be able to afford. Mm-hmm. Their only option is going to be a condo. So they are great legal entities to own. So yeah, I enjoyed being on the board very much. As I said, the 3 of us, even though we were all new, we were all committed and determined to make things right. So we were both working for ourselves, because obviously we have a big financial stake in it too, but we wanted to make it better for everyone. And so we all worked very, very hard. We all had, busy day jobs. They were all different, but we all, when the jobs needed to be done, they got done. Nobody was shirking. We all worked an immense number of hours. I used to think it took me between 10 and 20 hours a week to do the board work.
10 to 20 hours a week to do the board work. That right there is probably going to scare the majority of board members away. That was really during the time that you were dealing with these legal problems, right? Since those legal problems have subsided, have you served on the board, and what would you say the time commitment is when you're not dealing with that level of issue?
A lot depends on management, property management. A
Agreed.
lot.
Yes.
A lot. A lot depends on technology. My thing is technology. We waste so much time fiddling and faddling with busy work, like admin work, because you can't find the document, you can't find this. So you've got no tech backup. Again, that's why I left the board determined to build a software solution. So if you have great management, which you should have, but it's hard to find, if you have great technology to help you and you have a board that's committed to getting the work done, there's no reason to spend more than 5 to 10 hours a week. It's still a significant commitment for sure, and you should know that. You should know what's expected. But the 5 to 10 hours a week, it may only be 5 hours every week, and then there'll be a rush. It's definitely, I think we would be doing new directors a disservice by telling them it was easy and that it didn't take much time.
I would agree with that.
They should know, and not everybody can commit the time that it takes today. If they've got, a new baby at home, new job or something like that. But the level of effort is not overwhelming. 5 hours a week is pretty reasonable.
It is reasonable. And what value do you think that you get out of it as a person volunteering for your community? One of my biggest concerns, being a community association manager, I've been in the business for 15 years. Well, arguably my whole life, but I've been doing it as a career for the last 15 years. And I'm sure that you've experienced those tough board meetings just as I have. And I put up a post on my LinkedIn that you may or may not have seen, which was, do you ever wonder if your board members don't sleep or do you ever go home from a meeting and not be able to sleep at night? It's worse for your board members. You as a board member, live in the community. The manager gets to go home and really gets to remove themselves from the environment where, the next morning the board member has to wake up and walk to their car and face the community members. And oftentimes that can be daunting. So what is it that attracts you to serving as a board member? And, are those tough times worth the good times?
For me, one of the strongest values that I have always lived by for my entire life is service to community. The time I spent in Thailand was with CUSO, which is like the US Peace Corps. Volunteerism is alive and well. So I've always believed that. And if you buy into a condo, you pretty much also must believe that it's a community. It's a type of living arrangement that requires commitment and it requires people to serve. I'm happy to serve. I never expected anything from anyone as a requirement for doing this because I did it for myself. I did it for the community. I didn't need rewards and kudos and that kind of thing. I think that's rare though. But what I got out of it is that I took our condominium with others. I didn't do it by myself, but I took us through the worst time and got us through it. We got ourselves through it. So, leaving after 5 years, I decided to leave. I didn't get voted off. I made the decision to leave. I was satisfied because I know what I had done. I know what I had contributed. And that's kind of enough for me. What makes it difficult, getting up in the morning when I lived on the property was that some people hated me because of what we had done. And we had made mistakes and people don't respect your boundaries. And so you can't walk around the property without being accosted by owners who want you to stand and talk to them.
If I was to stop right here and say something to owners really quick when it comes to how you're treating your board and board members, and let me know if you agree or disagree with this statement. Board members are really acting as board members when a meeting is called to order. When they are walking around the community and walking their dog, that is not the appropriate time to go up and address the situation. One, the other board members are not there to help make a decision. Number two, oftentimes words get put in a board member's mouth at a meeting later on. Oh, I saw you on Tuesday of last week when you were walking your dog and you told me this, and there was nobody there to help support that question and answer. So when you see your board members out walking around and they're just in their daily lives, don't address them as board members. So you can send them an email and let them know that you have something to talk about. And that's one other point that I want to make. It is about kindness. We are here to build communities. And if you're a homeowner that has information, don't take that information and hold it in your back pocket to go to your board meeting and hit your board and your community manager over the head with. Be nice, be kind. If you need something, make sure that they have the information well in advance so they're prepared to answer the question. That's the best way to conduct business. By going in and trying to sabotage your board or the manager in the meeting is definitely not a good way to conduct things, and it does not build the type of environment and community that people want to live in. And so those are 2 points that I wanted to make, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, I definitely agree. And I didn't know at the time. I didn't know how I would address that. When I was back on the board the second time, I had a brand new director, and I told him, I said, once you leave the boardroom, you're not a director anymore. And when owners address you, politely tell them that, you know, I've heard you, but I'm not a director at the moment. I'm not going to address your questions. Please send them on to, we used to have our property manager collect all the questions to give to us rather than to emailing the board directly.
Right.
So, but that's very hard for people. It was hard for him to not jump and engage and become enraged as well in these conversations, because some of the owners were quite hostile. It comes back to one of my points that I think is so important, is setting those expectations. All of our owners were also new condo owners themselves. For many, it was their first home. Like me, it was my first home, my first purchase.
Right.
They
Right.
don't know.
Good point.
No one had ever set the expectation, ever. But you know, with 7 years on the board, I know what I know now. I wish I had known then, and that's certainly one of them. Setting those expectations, setting up space for respectful dialogue. If they want meetings, we had many owner meetings. We usually brought our lawyers with us because there was so many contentious issues that we needed our lawyers with us. And there would be the declarant, like the evil guy, could show up and ask questions. So, and we were not prepared to deal with some of the hostility from the owners directed at us because of all the.
It goes back to being kind. Your volunteer board members are doing the best with the information that they have, and oftentimes they're facing situations that they did not cause. And so I know this isn't just, this may or may not have happened in your community, but in many communities, there are situations where the reserves aren't there to fix an issue, and you have to special assess. And you went through that. You went through a special assessment, or a couple of them. It wasn't the board's fault. The board is trying to make sure that they're protecting the value of the association, to make sure that your investment continues to produce for you over time. So even if you're upset, one of our core values with my company is seek to better understand. And what I mean by that is, before becoming angry or hostile towards your board, really try and understand their position. There's probably a lot going on, that a regular member doesn't see. And the boards will give you the level of transparency you're looking for. I promise they want you to know. And probably more often than not, they're giving that level of transparency in the board meeting with presentations, documentation. You can go read the meeting minutes, but attending the board meeting is going to give you a lot more context than just reading the minutes. So don't not participate. And too many communities, I see people not attend board meetings until there's an explosion that is going on, which is a raise in assessments, a special assessment, a maintenance issue that needs to be addressed. And then they come very angry, but they don't know the whole backstory. So again, seek to better understand before you come and address your board.
We had one of the early AGMs at the beginning of all the troubles. We had I think 82 out of 87 units represented.
Well,
No one.
That's almost 100% attendance. That's almost unheard of.
It's completely unheard of, and we've never had it again.
Sure.
But because there was so much going on, people came out, we rallied, we knocked on doors, we told people they really needed to be there, and they were. We had a couple of more AGMs with 50 or 60 owners represented. There were some very contentious ones.
And what does the acronym AGM stand for?
Oh, Annual General Meeting.
Okay, Annual General Meeting. Okay, we call it something different here, so I didn't know exactly what you were referring to.
What do you call them? General meetings?
We just call it annual meeting. So we have our annual and budget ratification meeting is how we address it here in Colorado. And just different states have different sayings. So it depends on where you are in the country. And so I hadn't heard that before, but good to know that that's how you say it up there. That's
right. One of my U.S. customers questioned me on the same thing, and it's annual meeting, not AGM.
You were kind of going a minute ago, you were going down the path of talking about the importance of an association manager and a qualified one at that. And so I'd like to hear from you as a board member a couple of things. The first is, have you had in the past qualified managers that you highly respected, and have you had ones that you've struggled with? And when you struggle with a manager, how did you go about rectifying that situation?
Well, you'll be disappointed to know that my condo is kind of a crazy condo when it comes to managers and management companies. We've had, I think, 10 managers and 4 companies in 10 years.
Okay.
So typically the reaction of the board is to fire them.
Fire the management company.
Fire the manager or the management company. We've switched managers within a company, and then we've also fired the company. As I was leaving the board, new board coming on, the management company fired the condo because of personalities of one of the directors. Not me, a new director coming back on the board after a previous term. I wish management companies would do more of that. Actually, if they wait until they fire them, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But some management companies actually fire the boards that have hired them to work for them. So I've seen a lot of different managers. Were they qualified? I would say most of them were qualified enough. Licensing has only come to Ontario in the last 2 years. I'm not sure I'm seeing much of a change given the licensing. I don't know, and I'm not on the board now, so perhaps, but the one manager that I worked with who was licensed prior to the mandatory requirement, I mean, he was as qualified then as he is now. His failings were other things, and I could have lived with some of its communications. They all fall down in communications, and my condo is crazy. Lots of challenges from owners, lots of rule violations, and extremely busy, as you can tell. And so the manager is like, no human being could keep up with this kind of a board. Like, no one, full stop. With just email and no kind of technology, nothing to organize things, like nothing. So usually what would happen is the board would get frustrated, fire the manager, get a new one, get frustrated for the same reason, get frustrated with the company, fire the company. And we've come back again to the same company we were with 5 years ago. So, what didn't get us? That's stupid.
That has happened to me quite a few times recently, which I love. I mean, there's no bigger compliment than when a client wants to come back. So I'm also trying to campaign not only kindness but culture. Mm-hmm. When we go and talk to boards, and boards are like, well, what should we know? I hear all too often, well, you need to understand how the documents work. You have your declarations, your bylaws, your rules, and articles of incorporation, how those intertwine with the hierarchy. But I don't hear people talk about what are our core values and what's the culture that we're going to build for our community. And that can be more important oftentimes than just the documents. Yes, enforcing the rules is what we do, but we're trying to build community. And I think culture is the number one thing that should be discussed. So some core values of certain communities, a core value may be we keep fees low, right? That can be a core value. I'm not going to say that I think that's one that's appropriate, but it could be a core value. Other communities, they may have a core value that says we're not going to allow our reserves to drop below $300,000. Well, that may mean that fees get raised on a consistent basis. So one value versus the other, you're going to have to choose what you want for your community. But when you decide how those core values are going to go, which one of the things that I heard a minute ago was no manager can keep up with the level of email traffic. So for my company, the way that we handle our fee is this. 50% goes to accounting right off the bat. We're a GAAP compliant company, so we separate out all accounting responsibilities. We have a full accounting department, accounts payable, accounts receivable, a bookkeeper, banking specialist, a legal liaison, and a controller that oversees the whole process to provide the financials. So 50% of the fee automatically goes to accounting. The managers get paid 30% of what the contract value is, and then the management company gets 10% overhead and 10% profit if we can squeeze it out. So if you think about what your manager is making for your community, and the time commitment it takes them to manage that particular association, when you deduct it like that, and you see the small percentage of financial reward that they're getting, it may change the thought process to say, wow, okay, maybe we are overworking our manager. And unfortunately, in community association management, I think it has been my experience that our services are really valued at lowest possible, if not zero. And what I mean by that is oftentimes board members, when they call me for a proposal, they just want to know, what's your fee? I know they don't tell me anything about their community. They just think it's a $1 per door fee that I charge. And that is not the way that I do it. I really try and understand the time commitment it's going to take so I can appropriately compensate the manager. So that way it's a long-term relationship and there's a level of expectation that both the manager and the community understands that they're going to be receiving. So oftentimes that makes us not the cheapest, but I have managers here with with a lot of experience. One has over 30, I've got one with 20, a couple of 15 years of experience. And when you have somebody who has a lot of experience, it's like this. And sorry for the rant, but think about maintenance, right? You can hire a $15 an hour guy that's going to take him 7 hours to complete a job, or you can hire a guy for $50 an hour that's going to take him 30 minutes to an hour to complete a job. Right. So if you have a highly skilled and trained manager, they're going to be able to get things done a little bit easier because they have the experience to do that. So that's my pitch on one of the ways that communities should address management is that if they are going to need that level of attention, the management company and the manager is going to need that level of compensation.
So I very much learned to appreciate what we were paying for and what we were getting back. And when those two things are out of alignment, obviously something has to give. Right. And on the manager side is that they could never, as I said, keep up with the demand on the communication side. Requests for information, complaints from owner, nonsense, like no one could keep up. They didn't have enough time in a day and no one is that organized.
When I took over running my organization, I went out and I met with my board members and I met with my staff, and both of them were very much saying the same thing. My manager seems too busy, and my manager is saying, I'm too overwhelmed. Well, that is true. When the manager is the point of contact for all board members, all homeowners, all vendors, they're being administrators. An email goes to the manager about an accounting issue. They have to manage that from inception all the way back and then the communication back again. And you had mentioned earlier, communication is always a problem. So we have moved to a help desk ticketing system, and we have an administrative staff and we all share the same email. So as an email comes in, we as the management company know how to distribute information. We shouldn't expect every board and homeowner to know to email Susie in accounting with an accounting question and George in management with a management question. So if it comes in and information is being, the first thing that they should do is try and answer the question. That's priority one, because in today's age with technology, it's about timeliness and getting an answer. So that's step number one. If the administration is not able to answer it, they can send it to the correct department. Now, information is being provided up to the manager instead of from the manager down, freeing them the time to be able to perform managerial responsibilities, coming on site, meeting with the boards, overseeing vendors, making sure contracts are being being performed to the level that the community is expecting. And so that would be one recommendation that I make for a lot of community association management companies. Support the managers, give them the level of support they need, and don't allow them to be active.
For my own business, I have a ticketing system. It's the only way I can keep track of
Absolutely
stuff coming in. I'm going away next week. I can hand over my ticketing system actually to my back-end developer, which is not ideal, but that's all I have right now.
But at least you can take your portfolio of information and give it to somebody, so there's answers being completed during your absence. Unlike email, where somebody leaves and all you have is a out-of-office email response. That's frustrating. But to be able to assign your whole portfolio in a ticketing system, it's fantastic.
I made this suggestion several times to a property manager. Why don't you use this particular software? There's a free version. You can use it for nothing. The other great part of it is there's a frequently asked question system that is a searchable frequently asked questions. So you can get owners, so the basic question from us is, how do I get an extra key for the front door?
Right. It's a great question.
How many emails, how many back and forths, payment of money, a whole waste of time over nothing. Well, this system can, how do I get a new key? Boom, 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 do it. Done. Lots of very simple things that automated and self-service.
Two more questions for you. Number one, words of wisdom for a board member interested in sitting on the board. What would you tell them?
Yes, so I spend a lot of time thinking about that myself, because I blog and podcast on those types of issues as well. There's 3 or 4 things. So commit to doing it, and you all should. All owners should consider being on a board, and they should do it when the time is right for them. But when you do it right and commit 100%. You have to learn. You have to make the investment. Hopefully you've made the investment before you get on the board, but you have to make the investment in learning. There's a lot of online resources. There's seminars, workshops, organizations, associations, all dedicated to providing information to owners and directors. So just do it. You have to do it. Other key thing is to understand the fiduciary responsibility that you're getting yourself into. And particularly, understand that you're acting in the best interest of the corporation, and make sure that you understand what that means and how that's different from like the rest of the time when you act in your own best interest. Nothing's wrong with acting in your own best interest. We all do that all the time, but you need to know the difference, and you need to be able to separate when I'm an owner, when I'm a director. And like you said, it's when you walk into the boardroom, the meeting's called to order. Now I'm a director. Now I forget about myself personally. I think collectively. A lot of directors, owners do not understand that. Keep learning. Always be learning. Directors have a huge challenge when they get on the board, is that who do we ask a question that might be able to give us an answer and help us out? So you're required to consult with experts. So yes, property manager is a great resource. They have an expertise. Engineers, lawyers, accountants, and so on. But the resource that no one ever is able to access is the resources of previous directors. Not necessarily from that condo, probably not, but from other condos, other HOAs that they can consult with who've had good experience. I'm not saying any director, but directors who were excellent. Those resources are not there. They're not organized. You can't find them. And they would be a valuable support to directors at any stage in their growth as a director. And that should be available. Management companies like yourself could actually facilitate some of that organizing.
Mm-hmm.
because you work with so many boards. Not that you're going to run it, I'm not suggesting that, but you could help make those connections and create groups of, the wisdom, directors with wisdom that could then help other directors.
That is a wonder. That I love that suggestion. And then last question: if you had words of wisdom for a community association manager who is new and interested in getting into this industry, what would they be?
The first board meeting, the first meeting, whatever it is, informal or formal, is have the talk, set the expectations, and be honest and direct and forthright. Tell boards, communicate with your board what the expectations are. Get them out on the table. Uncover the assumptions that are never spoken. And then become that trusted partner, because your manager is they are the keystone. They are a huge part of a good board.
That's a big compliment. Thank you very much. That was wonderful compliment.
And then managers need to know where their expertise begins and ends. Never overstep those bounds. Never give advice, but don't govern, because managers do not govern. Boards govern. Managers manage.
Give advice, do not govern. That was such an important piece. We as managers, we are there to act as agent. We are not financially committed to this community like the owners are. And so don't govern, but give advice. I loved that suggestion.
And if those expectations are clarified at the very first meeting and annually after that, as new directors come on, have the talk. You have the talk with your kids, right? I'm sure you've had hard conversations. That your daughter is 18, you've done that.
Right.
And the other thing for any manager, new, old, or otherwise, is be prepared and learn how to say no. You're not everything to this board, and you must tell them no when it's not your job or you can't.
I just got done doing a whole, it was a drive. I was thinking about that same thing when I was driving the other day, and I took my camera out, and that was exactly the same thing I told new managers. If you're getting into this, don't be a yes person. So many managers are excited to get the job. They want to take on the world, and boy, are they going to do it. They're going to be the best thing for the management company, and they're really going to show the boards that they can do a good job, and they promise too much.
Yes.
And there's no way that they can fulfill all those promises. It's okay to say no. When you're young and in this industry, you may need to say no because you need to clarify it with somebody with more experience, and that's okay. As you get more experience, you're going to say no. But the reasons you're going to say no is because you're going to be able to explain to the board with diplomacy and tact why no is the better answer. And so thank you for saying that as a board member. It's so important for community managers to hear. Saying I don't know or no are perfectly acceptable. Don't overpromise. It will be the end of your career.
And I think for the managers I've worked with, we just kept piling more stuff on them. Like, honestly, if somebody seems to be saying yes, well, why would we do it if we think they're going to do it? And they all failed because they could not keep up with everything. And they never said no. And if the board isn't willing to listen to no, then that's when a management company should consider firing that board. And that's when I know a couple of my colleagues here have done so. There's also personality issues with directors too, but let's not go there. So then it's like, make sure the board knows what their responsibilities are. Govern, not manage. Managers manage and not govern. And there's a fine line in between. And when managers are overloaded, they must say no. Even if it is their job, they must say, I can't do it now, but I will, we'll prioritize, and we will figure out what needs to get done now and what can be put off, because that happens all the time. Summer seasons, you have a summer season as well. The work all has to get done, and it can only get done in a fairly short window. Other things can get pushed off.
And I would love to have you back on the show or be on yours and get into deeper context and conversation with some of these issues, because We got into some things today that were very broad, and I think we can bring some more clarity. Thank you for being on my show. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Seeing a perspective from a board member's point of view, I think is incredibly important. Pat Crosscombe, thank you so much for being on the show. I'll reach out to you again in the future, and we'll have you back.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. It is great to connect with management folks like yourself who are actually trying to think about this stuff.
I love it. Great. All right,
Okay.
Pat, I'll talk to you soon.